In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Amen. Hi, my name is Charlie. I am a member of this old corner of the internet, but I always find it difficult to participate in discussions because of time differences. I'm in the future, about 14 hours into the future, and it's pure happenstance and chance that I'm able to jump on. I say this all the time, but I am a poet. I've been a poet for a long time now, and I know that it is actually a necessary portion of my soul that I'm owed it. Martin Shaw calls a poet a phrase, a praise word, and I do agree with that. But I also believe that it is more unerasable, more permanent. Like Saint Porphyrio says, we all must become poets because we must suffer. I'm working on a book, and I want to participate in the discussion of poetry in the world, in culture and Christianity, because I think a lot about the usefulness of poetry and its utility in daily life, and why it's necessary, and where it's necessary, and how it's necessary, and how it's almost antithetical to so much of modern life. And even though I've said it, I don't think that there is anything good about a book of poems by itself, because there's something like the art gallery being a cemetery of art, that, or even the cemetery, that is something that we know is good. Like with a cemetery, we know it, and we know it's good to have a cemetery. We know it's good to have a place for the dead, to commemorate them with stone, with things that are permanent and lasting, and beauty, and also a quiet place, a place to respect and revere them. And yet it always seems like it's also the back corner of a place that we would say it's good to have, but not to engage with. But the thing that is good about it is the way that you can engage with it. And so there's a few poems that I love, and I'm going to try more and more to commit them to memory. Until I can, I'm going to be reading off of a screen. But they seem necessary to the conversation, to the discussion, because what do we do with passion? What do we do with feeling? What do we do with emotion? How do we surrender it? How do we give it up? How do we know we're holding it? There's so many questions in emotion, not emotion. And it feels like the most necessary thing is to speak them. And so I'll be doing two poems, one of my old poetry, which may or may not be in the book, I don't know, and one of something that has penetrated me, something that has broken me in a way. So this is called My Dreams Are Over Fields of Grass. This is called Fields of Grass. My dreams are of fields of grass, where ungulates trickle between the blades, rivulets full of vitality, and the night folds a cloudless lid and no stars. A green expanse under a black night, a claustrophobic horizon, monolithic shadow. The blankness is an articulation, delicate melancholy, a cathedral trapping the sky. Infinity seems like an illusion. Warm air wraps like silk holding me down, low pressure, soft blades brushing my abdomen and back, fingers electrifying the wind, invisible in everything except its effect. A reverence felt as crescendo, nostalgia lifting pensively above a sadness, almost opiated out of time. The rivers of life roll through the grass that grows, a moment away from everything. In every way it is a breath. I can no longer be above it. I am no longer enough. Never do I feel more before than now. I can no longer witness. Dogma bears an ugly face written under each thought. The sins and virtues rise out like a leviathan in waves of identity upon identity upon identity. This language is as freeing as it is capturing, flying by being picked up, where all that matters is what we hold and how we let go. And all that doesn't make sense is all we have to build with. In the light, it all weighs upon an axis that we cannot keep. Always spinning, turning a silver light to static as the shockwave of daylight rolls me through twilight. I see the stars ever expanding out. A vacuum and stillness in the syringe-like pull. My skin leaves me and each nerve looks out to the earth, defenseless with no wind. I begin to feel like an illusion. Identity peeled onto rock and sun, memories tossed into wind. My emotions rise and fall like a tide, in songs, in words, in smiles. I become an axis I cannot find. In all this movement, it all vanishes together. I can no longer be a witness. My dreams are of fields of grass. What makes the green grass grow? So, let me find out for you when I wrote this poem. When I wrote Fields of Grass, it must have been 7 years ago now. And I can tell you exactly what the inspiration was for it. And it's because of Fields of Grass. Now, I know there's a Walt Whitman poem of a similar name that I haven't read, because of course I haven't read it. So I wrote this in 2018 and I finished it in 2019. And it was actually a Joe Rogan podcast about, with Tim Kennedy, soldier. And he spoke about a Navy SEAL chant. And it was, what makes the green grass grow? Blood, blood, blood makes the green grass grow. And that stuck with me so much. It's absolutely profound, I think, in ways that I would normally not think about, especially for like military chants, but oh man, drenched in meaning. And I'm going to go through it. I'm going to explain away this poem. And that doesn't mean that this is what the poem means, because I wrote it 7 years ago. I don't actually really think I know what it means. To keep everything scary and spooky, I wasn't a Christian there, and I don't think I ever had that much of a thought on religion. in terms of submission. And so there's a mystery about me here as well. Not that I really want to pay too much attention to that, but maybe it's useful. But anyway, blood makes the green grass grow. The idea that suffering is tied in with beauty. The idea of a perfectly black night being still in nature. This idea of the Garden of Eden, or like the Rousseauian paradise, also is completely black. There are moments where it is dense and scary and horrifying and monolithic, but there is that beauty, there is that seed of hope that we push into that vision. A claustrophobic horizon, a monolithic shadow. The idea that these ideas are bigger than our ideas of them. Cathedral trapping the sky is like, yeah, we push ourselves into constructs, and those constructs are still complex and beautiful. Infinity seems like an illusion is a sensation that I always feel that there's that German word, it escapes me now, and of the world being fundamentally more complex than you could ever imagine. And it's, not overwhelming you right now. It's just not. Warm air wraps like silk, holding me down, low pressure, soft blades brushing my abdomen and back, fingers electrifying the wind, invisible in everything except its effect. This is me trying to understand the lack of separation between environment, idea, sensation, and self. And that falling into that giving over of oneself into the world that truly happens in moments of like complete openness, of complete safety, of security, those moments where I'm no longer needing to go me and outside. And that's why reverence as a crescendo, reverence felt as a crescendo, because obviously it's your idea that I am the wind, or I am the grass, I am these sensations, and these are me. Like this touch that escapes and carries on past my skin, that is actually also something that carries on. That is that part of myself is a bit that's carried on. That's a crescendo. That's a grandiose idea that is arrogant and prelesty and all of it. And that's why it's nostalgia. It is nostalgia. It is a form of pride. Like nostalgia being that phantom pain of a wound. Nostalgia being the longing of something that you don't have now. That hirayef, lifting pensively above a sadness, because there is a sadness in nostalgia, but you're almost allowed to be separated from it, or you're almost allowed to eke joy into it, almost opiated out of time, because it's not present. It's not happening. It's jumping into your head. The rivers of life roll through the grass that grows. A moment away from everything, in every way it is a breath. And that's when you sort of almost flip everything, and what you thought was, static and graspable and understandable, and yourself, and what you thought was movable and chaotic and out of your control, is almost the opposite. The world is still and we are moving through it. And in every way, it is a breath. It is sort of us taking in ourselves and moving out into ourselves. I feel like I'm hyping myself up now, but poetry fundamentally is exploring ideas that words by themselves cannot contain. And in so many ways, trying to strip myself out of what I have written and put it into a thing that I can try to communicate with is what I'm trying to do. So in some ways, I owe this to the poem. in the light, it all weighs upon an axis we cannot keep. Oh no, oh no, oh no, I missed a bit. I can no longer be above it. I am no longer enough. Never do I feel more before than now. More locked, more static, more unable to affect, more. I can no longer witness. Because that's all I feel you are in certain places. Dogma bears an ugly face written under each thought. Because when you feel like you have no control and you are trying to surrender to something, like God, or a person, rules and boundaries and declarations and instantiations sort of just jump at you. Because, if I do something in the immediate, that's a part of my identity. I'm an eternal part. I'm eternally tied to it, which is true in a certain way, but not true in others. And they thrash inside when you are in an overthinking mood, as I am prone to. They rise like waves of identity upon identity upon identity. And what you think you are, who you think you should be, who you think they are telling you to be. Chaos and chaos and chaos. This language is as freeing as it is capturing. That says everything. Expression is like movement. It confines you to be what you have declared. And it also sets things in motion to be countered and responded to and against it. And all that doesn't make sense is all we have to build with. Everything that we've tried to let go is that what moves us. Every mistake that we've made that's led us to that conclusion. We only have the faculty that has led us to those mistakes to begin with. How do we trust that? How do we move that? I think I know the answer and I think I understand it. But it's definitely still not simple or easy. In the light, it weighs all upon an axis that we cannot keep. That's the fundamental part of it. Now, trust me, 7 years ago, I swear to you, I was never thinking about Jesus Christ. And yet, he was there. An axis we cannot keep. We are not God. He is necessarily not us in so many ways. And it's always spinning, turning a silver light to static. That idea of when something is moving so fast, it looks still. As the shockwave of daylight rolls me through twilight, living, going mad, and watching the darkness come in. Always spinning, turning a silver light. Oh. I see the stars ever expanding out. The idea about depersoning yourself or getting your ego out of that center deepens the world. It doesn't make it more shallow. A vacuum and stillness in the syringe-like pull. The syringe-like pull. My skin leaves me and each nerve looks out to the earth, defenseless, with no wind. It feels like you are separating yourself. And you're watching everything else become more vulnerable. And at the same time, that's because you are becoming more vulnerable. I begin to feel like an illusion. Could anything be more vulnerable? Could anything be more summary of what vulnerable really feels like? This is what you're trying to fight against when you are in those most vulnerable points. Identity peeled onto rock and sun. Stretched out, exposed. Memories tossed into wind. Anything you thought you were can be and is irrelevant. My emotions rise and fall like a tide. everything that I think I am, and those things are important in songs, in words, in smiles. Memories of other people are huge. I become an axis I cannot find. I think I can. I think I am. Or at least I think I am. In all this movement, it all vanishes together. I can no longer be a witness. And that is the call to take up a cross. You must be a part of the world, but not for yourself. And everything that you have recognized and called out and loved, and that is beautiful, is real, and is the first thing. And loving it will make you suffer. And in that suffering, it will bloom even more beautiful than if you didn't. My dreams are of fields of grass. What makes the green grass grow? Blood, blood, blood makes the green grass grow. Very melancholy, very serious, very heavy. And there's a lot in there. All right, that was an old poem. I very much like that poem, actually. I think it has a lot of beauty into it and a lot of depth. I'm glad I'm going to cut these up. So I'm going to put the long one up because, everyone needs to know how terrible this is. But one should also not need to have the patience of dealing with my every thought. This next poem is the first, has been called one of the greatest poems of the Western language. And I have to agree. And there's so many ways it's almost too powerful. In so many ways, it's almost indulgent. But this is the interesting problem with poetry. I think there's a deep and profound utility to it. I remember that video that was going around of Ethan Hawke saying, like, to be a poet, like, nobody wants poetry until, their father dies, or nobody wants to be into nobody wants poetry until their son's wedding, or their these big moments where words escape us. And I like that. I also really enjoy adorning your mind with beauty. I also really do, and I believe that there is a deepening of experience that happens when you have committed to understanding another's experience, and poetry is how to understand that. There is a depersoning of it that really opens you up to touching a universe that is in you. Anyway, so these called the dictations. I love this. I love that word because I absolutely agree. These poetry fundamentally is an exploring. I think in the book, I'm going to call it a discovery of poems. And I'm going to work on how I confront that bias that I have in poetry book. But when you write, it's discovering something. You're not inventing it in a way that you're considering something that isn't you and it is getting your permission to come out. That's why it's very hard to do these things, especially if you fall in love with them. But this poem is called The First Eulogy by Rilke. And it's just full of arrows and spears. It's full of them. And they're an interesting thing to realize in comparison to hymnody, because this is not This is not liturgical words, these are passion words. And I feel like there's a deep attempt in the world to have us run to passion and to have us engage with it and to have us fight with it. And in Christianity, I'll just say globally, we are called to humility, and we are called to flee from passion and flee from the world and flee from these things. And that tension, that tension, I think, is almost too shallow, because when I first heard my bishop's voice in liturgy, it is so quiet and so trembling and humble. The word is humble. But in that expression, he sounded angry in love, absolute, certain, wise, uncertain, joyful, ultimately expressive, ultimately central, and in a complete and total obedience and surrender. And that's what true humility is. It's not, it is a proper acknowledgement of the universe. St. Paisios says, all God wants us to do is be humble. And so I look at these passion points in poetry, my own included, in all these grand ideas and big things I have reaching and pulling out of my mind and head. And I go, this is all nothing, because it's the necessary way in which I compel myself into action and consider it fully and allow it to penetrate my person. But it is not the pain itself. Like a long time I was writing to solve my woes, and now I'm understanding I'm there to explore them and truly understand that they are a part of me and allow them to be let go out into the world. Long way of going about this, but this is the first eulogy by Rainer Maria Rilke. Who, if I cried out, would hear me among the angels' orders? And even if one of them suddenly against his heart pressed me, I would be consumed by his more potent being. For beauty is nothing but the beginning of terror, which we are still barely able to endure. And we are so awed, because calmly, coolly, it refrains from our annihilation. Every angel is terrifying. And so I hold myself back and swallow the call note of my dark sobbing. Oh, who can we ever turn to in our need? Not angels, not humans. And already the knowing animals are aware that we are not really at home in our interpreted world. Perhaps there remains for us some tree on a hillside, which every day we can take into our vision. There remains for us yesterday's street and the loyalty of a habit so much at ease when it stayed with us that it moved in and never left. Oh, and night. There is night, when a wind full of infinite space gnaws at our faces. Whom would it not remain for, that longed after mildly disillusioning presence, which the solitary heart so painfully meets? Is it any less difficult for lovers? But they keep on using each other to hide their own fate. Won't you know yet? Filling the emptiness out of your arms into the spaces we breathe. Perhaps the birds will feel the expanded air with more passionate flying. Yes, the springtimes needed you. Often a star was waiting for you to notice it. A wave rolled toward you out of the distant past, or as you walked under an open window, a violin yielded itself to your hearing. All this was mission. But could you accomplish it? When you're always distracted by expectation, as if every event announced a beloved, where can you find a place to keep her, with all the huge, strange thoughts inside you going and coming and often staying all night? But when you feel longing, sing of women in love, for their famous passion is still not immortal. Sing of women abandoned and desolate. You envy them almost, who could love so much more purely than those who were gratified. Begin again and again the never attainable praising. Remember, the hero lives on. Even his downfall was merely a pretext for achieving his final birth. But nature, spent and exhausted, takes lovers back into herself as if there were not enough strength to create them a second time. Have you imagined Gaspara Stampa intensely enough so that any girl deserted by her beloved might be inspired by that fierce example of soaring, objectless love, and might say to herself, maybe I can be like her? Isn't it time these most ancient sorrows at last bore fruit? Time we detached ourselves tenderly from our beloved and, trembling, stood free, the way the arrow, suddenly all vector, survives the string. For there is nowhere that we can remain. Voices, voices, listen, my heart, the way that only saints have listened to until now. That gigantic call lifting them up from the ground while they were still kneeling, noticing nothing. Listeners fully absorbed. Not that you could endure God's voice, not at all, but listen to the winds breathing and the ceaseless message that forms itself out of silence. It's murmuring towards you now from those who died young. Didn't their fate, whenever you stepped into a church in Naples or Rome, quietly come to address you? Or high up, some eulogy entrusted you with a mission, as last year on the plaque in Santa Maria Formosa. What they want of me is that I gently remove the appearance of injustice about their death, which at times slightly hinders their souls from proceeding onward. Of course, it is strange to inhabit the earth no longer, to give up customs one barely had time to learn, not to see roses and other promising things in terms of a human future, no longer to be what one was in infinitely anxious hands, to leave even one's own first name behind, forgetting it as easily as a child abandons a broken toy. Strange to no longer desire one's desires. Strange to see meaning that clung together once floating away in every direction. Being dead is hard work and full of retrieval before one can gradually feel a trace of eternity. Though the living are wrong to believe in the two sharp distinctions which they themselves have created. They say angels don't know whether it's the living they're moving amongst or the dead. The eternal torrent whirls all ages long in it, through both realms forever, and their voices are drowned out in its thunderous roar. In the end, those who were carried off early no longer need us. They are weaned from earth's sorrows and joys as gently as children, outgrow the soft breasts of their mothers. But we who need such great mysteries, we for whom grief is often the source of our spirit's growth, could we exist without them? is the legend meaningless that tells how, in the lament for Linus, the daring first notes of song pierced through the barren numbness. Then, in the startled space which a youth as lovely as a god had suddenly left forever, a void felt for the first time, that harmony which now enraptures and comforts and helps us. To those who are listening still, especially in the uncut version of this video, message me, comment, and let me find you and come on here and tell me poems that have hit you like that. Because again and again and again, I don't think a cemetery is meant to be unvisited. I don't think a book of poetry is meant to stay in closed book pages. I think a poem is meant to be carried in a heart that says it again and again and again. So I'm going to say that poem again, memorized. And then I'm going to say another one, and the next one, the next one, the next one. And then I'll have the Psalms memorized, and all of the great ambitions of my life will be accomplished. But thank you for this. Thank you for this moment. Stay following. Life is not going to get easier in making videos, but I will still try. I'll see you later.